The most frightening image of all time in the eyes of a 9-year-old me was this. On a quiet night in Flatwoods, West Virginia, September 1952, 9 people, family and friends, followed a bright light overhead that had crashed somewhere nearby. On arriving within the trees, this is what they saw. The creature had apparently hissed and glided towards them, after which point they fled. I saw this image in a book about UFOs that I got from my primary school library. I never returned that book, by the way. I just left it in a random locker after reading it because I was scared. Reading it alone during lunch break, nobody else nearby save for the gentle wind and the open blue sky. And over a decade later, I still think about the Flatwoods monster, how it was almost certainly a barn owl, and how it looked pretty much like a human. It had arms and legs, and it almost looked like it had a dress, but it also had that strange, far too simple face, that odd shape behind its head. Back then I was a complete idiot child, so I didn't even process that this wasn't an actual photograph, and so it scared me even more than it should have. My obsession with aliens has never really faded, regardless of what setting I end up finding them in. And I still find them everywhere, each one reminding me of the many photographs in that old book. So today I want to recapture or relive that feeling when I was 9, being both terrified and completely enraptured by the strange lights that shine in the night sky. To do that, we're going to start with something familiar yet not. Elden Ring is no stranger to horrifying designs, and neither is it a stranger to aliens. Despite being something of a medieval fantasy, it's got its fair share of creatures crashed from the stars, those who wield the power of gravity magic. And this form of purple magic feels strangely non-magical, at least from a traditional sense. Glintstone can be harnessed in crystal formations, giving it this more physical, grounded feeling. Gravity magic is paired with this purple electricity-esque effect, and these dark rocks that rise from the earth. Magic in these cases feels more like a facet of reality we simply don't yet fully understand, and yet something that could eventually be categorized. It being taught from academic scrolls makes this all the more clear. But what challenges that categorization is Astel. Titled the Naturalborn of the Void, Astel lurks deep below the Lake of Rot, a path only reached by traversing the game's many underground rivers. And tell me, when you see this creature, what is your eye first drawn to? For me, and to most others, it's the head. By its very nature, its presence prompts a chicken and egg question. It's a human skull, of course, but it has no skin nor internal organs within. Instead, a gaping hole on its forehead contains its eye, and antlion-esque jaws flank the sides. Which prompts the question, why would it have holes for eyes and space for a brain and mouth that isn't there? And if this being is a malformed star as described, why would it possibly have any human-like traits? The rest of its body, while abstract, contains similar traces. Its arms are eerily humanoid even if they line its colorful body like the limbs of a centipede. The antlion connection is made stronger with the large insectoid stinger that hangs from its tail. Perhaps Astel is some fault of humanity, some sort of twisted aberration born from our sins. Nothing else seems to explain this nightmarish design choice. It has a title, it has established lore, and it could be initially explained as just that, a singular error in our reality, in our consciousness. The only problem with viewing this thing as a singular twisted error in the universe is there's more than one. Deep in the consecrated snowfield, one of the game's more well-hidden areas, there is a tunnel. It lies at the far west past a ruin filled with frenzied trolls. Within this cave, one that is visually completely unique, are these humanoid aliens with swords you find across the game. They come out of portals, shoot meteors at you, have long ears and skin of stone. Traditional, classic human-like aliens, only with a slightly medieval fantasy twist. But when you open the boss door, probably expecting a minor mini-boss, you get this. A massive frozen cavern with a familiar enemy within. Astel Stars of Darkness is just like its initial counterpart, only without any of the lore and much tankier. It would be easy to call this asset reuse because it essentially is. A big important lore boss reused as a mini-boss for a later area with zero relevance. But two things keeping me from dismissing the Stars of Darkness are: one, the uniqueness of this entire cave. This frozen underground tunnel brings to mind classic imagery of aliens buried under the ice. Two, Stars of Darkness is not completely identical. The first Astel has this attack, where it teleports away only to emerge from the sky and grab at you, crushing you in its jaws. The second one has the same thing, but there are plenty more of these lesser Astels in the game, often found hanging upside down in deep caverns, sending hails of meteorites towards you almost like they're in a cocoon stage. They float unnaturally, not even hanging from anything, but existing in an eerie stasis. You can even find them in what is presumably their larval stage in the form of falling star beasts, these creatures which are found in crashed meteors covered in black rock. They seem unrelated till you look at their eyes and jaw and see that they have the same skull within, the antlion to the antlion fly. We then possibly have a little more to piece together, a life cycle of some kind. But there's a little quirk with this simple insect-like parallel. These hanging creatures are not called cocooned Astels. The community name of malformed star is fan-made. The closest thing we have to a name in official material is Withered Astel. Perhaps they're not a cocoon, then. Perhaps they're what happens after, when that burst of color explodes into a supernova and they spend the rest of their existence simply hanging, existing, drained of their vibrance. Perhaps there is only one Astel simply existing in different stages of time. There are no answers, and much like many other aspects of Elden Ring, the mystery endures. What happens in between these forms? We still don't know anything about where the skull comes from. We still don't know what to make of this alien. So many riddles remain locked within these creatures, their life cycles, their names, their origins, so what then explains this mockery of humanity? Their existence remains an unanswered question, one of countless that Elden Ring refuses to shed light on. All we know is that it is wrong, unnatural, and yet so undeniably connected to us, in a way we simply cannot grasp. Ridley Scott's Alien is not subtle at all about its designs, to a point where I don't think I could show a lot of them. But I can at least show the Xenomorph, one of the greatest alien designs of all time, and one of the most evocative, able to prompt so many contradictory emotions with just a single look. What is there to say about this creature that hasn't already been said? It is iconic in every way, biomechanical, smooth and solid skin that appears almost chitinous and insectoid, incredibly strong, eyeless, a mouth in a mouth, razor-sharp tails and acid for blood, drool constantly dripping between its jaws. They are perfect killing machines and they feel engineered to be existentially wrong. The main question many have on their mind is this: why is the Xenomorph's head phallic? And what's with the rest of its body? If you're into Alien or into the Alien at all, you probably know of the work of H.R. Giger, the mind behind the film's many spectacular designs. This mix of overt sexuality with the cold and mechanical, creating a feeling of eerie profanity. A driving factor in this character design is present in much of Giger's art, that being contrast with itself. What it evokes appears contradictory, and yet those themes are absolutely linked. Desire and terror, sexuality and death. It quickly prompts up subconscious confusion, this thing violating and killing humans, yet so provocative. Something that feels so cold and solid and mechanical, yet one that drools, grows, and acts like an animal. Something that crawls on all fours like a creature with a tail, and yet one that can stand on its hind legs like a human if need be. It is terrifying, and yet in its contradictions, something about it is enthralling. Everything about this creature is provocative, paralleled and contrasted with Ripley, the film's sole female protagonist. As the creature picks off the other male crew members, we experience the fear of assault, fear of birth, fear of pregnancy, from a different perspective, as this monster, a child, emerges from a man's stomach. It is an ever-present theme that cannot be ignored, as much as some people might say otherwise. In many ways, the xenomorph is so much like a human, and in others, completely alien. And the only parts of them we recognize are the ones that frighten and arouse the most. So with that in mind, where does it come from? One of the first glimpses we get is the crashed ship with the massive corpse of the space jockey, a strange biomechanical figure fused to its seat. Its chest is burst open, its bones jutting outwards, and yes, I know, apparently this is an engineer. I don't care, I don't like sequels. In the moment, when your eyes are first laid on this creature framed in this gorgeous theater of Giger's artistry, fossilized like an insect's shed skin, this is more than a humanoid in a spacesuit. This is an alien. An intelligent alien with a ship drifting across the endless dark for what could be millennia, its beacon forever warning travelers away. A ship that was carrying these deadly, eternally hibernating killing machines, whether as weapons or as scientific specimens or as its own creations, we'll never know. There are some scattered observations to make. The way the ship's structure appears similar in design to the xenomorph's bodies. The fact that there are still humanoid elements to both. And that is what makes this site so compelling. Because it means this creature was like us, vulnerable to the xenomorph in the same way, possibly frightened and equally compelled by its biology. A victim possibly of bad luck and possibly of exploitation. And when we cross this threshold, we suffer from the same fate. There is one more very human element to Alien. The xenomorph is the main antagonist of the film, but how it comes about is clearly from the actions of Weyland-Yutani. This corporate greed and immorality results in the Nostromo's disaster when things come crashing down and crew members get picked off one by one. And when it happens, it feels like a divine punishment in a way, the death of many for the sins of one. It feels like a consequence. I don't feel the need to elaborate on how this greed into annihilation parallels reality because, in truth, you don't have to look very hard. Instead, I'd like to present three perspectives. Weyland-Yutani's perspective on the xenomorph is the same they have on us. Their first thought when they lay eyes on these creatures is profit, and we are different means to the same end. From our perspective as the audience, the only distinction between the alien and the corporation is how slowly they kill us. These heartless things do whatever is necessary to propagate themselves, whether that be by a quick explosion to the chest or by an agonizing life devoid of any meaning beyond servitude. The alien's perspective between Weyland's agents and us is the same. And that's what's most notable about the alien in these movies, because it is not necessarily a force of evil, it's more a force of nature. We are indistinguishable to them. And it's why the vague origins of the alien in the original film is so effective. You don't need to know where it's from. The tenuous small hints of its connective tissue to us is more than enough to elicit fear. The fear that something might have been on equal ground to us, something just as intelligent and powerful and capable, and that all we have left is its killer. And it matters not who it kills, who it assaults, who it turns into its nest. The danger is here to stay, and it's still there, festering even if we survive. In space, no matter who we are, no one can hear us scream.
What's a bad miracle? They got a word for that. Nope.
Nope is a film that finds itself rooted down in my brain, one that will probably remain that way for the rest of my life. Scenes, quotes, shots continue to linger, mainly in part thanks to Jordan Peele's masterful use of visual motifs. Every one of his movies has certain iconography, certain colors, certain choices that are hard to let go of. Get Out has the coffee cup, the sunken place, the camera flash. Us has the red jumpsuits, the golden scissors, the rabbits and the tunnels. And there are many contenders for Nope. The standing shoe, Jupe's cowboy hat and red outfit, the dark blue night sky, the single motionless cloud. And I think a lot about what lies behind that cloud. Nope's main twist is that the alien spaceship isn't a spaceship. It's a singular living being, one the protagonists label Jean Jacket, named after the first horse Emerald was meant to train with, though she never got to. And Jean Jacket's entire design plays into how much our perception may be misshapen. This is a creature completely foreign and unknown to us, and yet we still associate ourselves, our culture, with it. To us it looks like a spaceship even though it isn't, a little trick of pareidolia. And it carries so many elements that play into the movie's themes. Its behavior is like an animal, predatory, territorial, shifting in and out of its little habitat, stalking its prey before going in for the kill. Glimpses of it out of the corner of your eye as it ducks into the clouds. Its very shape, aside from looking like a pop culture UFO, also resembles an eye. While Jupe is wrong about it being an alien ship, he isn't entirely wrong when he calls it the Observers. Now, I've been a little deceptive with implying Jean Jacket is an alien, because in truth the film never once says that it is. And that's where another layer is added onto this little twist, because as unfamiliar as it is, this creature is an animal. Much like the horse at the very beginning of the movie, which reacts violently to a reflective VFX ball. Much like Gordy, the chimp, who snaps after balloons are let out onto the set. These apparently disconnected moments all serve to show our relationship with animals, and Jean Jacket is much like them. It is territorial, predatory, but ultimately not a sentient force of malice. Alien as a concept is simply placed onto Jean Jacket because that's the first thing that comes to mind. Alien doesn't just mean the little green man after all. It could mean something unfamiliar, disturbing, or distasteful. And so even if Jean Jacket is just an animal, even if it was born on Earth and simply lived this way in the clouds for centuries, that won't stop us from assigning it with that title. And as with many alien stories, Nope displays the consequences of human naivety. Let's talk about Jupe. He was a token Asian kid in the American sitcom Gordy's Home. Already, something in his very nature was being used for entertainment. Hollywood's relationship with race has always been, to put it minimally and respectfully, fucked. It's no mistake that the carelessness and bad taste Nope displays is not just of animals but of people. And when a chimp playing the character of Gordy snaps, killing cast members and leaving Jupe traumatized, he can only cope with it in one way. The only way the industry taught him. By exploiting the incident and himself. He has merchandise of this horrifying event, an effective shrine of the tragedy. He can only recount it not by outlining the actual event, but describing the SNL sketch based on it. Unable to process his own trauma with anything but the entertainment that thrives on it. It is so very real and so very ghoulish.
And not many people know this, but one of the most common side effects of Tourette's is cannibalism.
And this exploitation, generational and continuous, extends to Jean Jacket. Jupe thinks he can control it, feed it horses, get it to comply and show it off to an audience, make a living from it. And then that narrow human perspective of manipulation is broken. And even as his audience gets taken, as these floating shadows fly past his eyes, as he comes to terms with his failure, Jupe still does not run. He can't escape because he is fixated, unable to look away. The same fate befalls other characters too, those who cannot see beyond their own desire for more footage, for a greater spectacle. His trauma or the horror he's witnessed is nothing more than a commodity, a torch that's been passed down to him. Jean Jacket's UFO reminiscent shape was a bait and switch. It's not how it really looks all the time. But even when we are subverted and it transforms into something entirely abstract, many brains still come to the same collective conclusion, something still born from our very human culture. Angel. When it transforms, when the film's theme of spectacle reaches the forefront, and it transitions from horror into horse-riding adventure, something we've seen from the very beginning, its eye begins to flap outward and blink. Like a cobra opening its hood for intimidation, sure, but also like the shutter of a camera. And here it begins chasing one of the first successive collections of photographs, a black man riding a horse. Those exploited made into commodities, chased by the monster. In this moment, Jean Jacket is everything entertainment industries have created. The bodies they stack up, the desire to film even if it kills to do so, and most obviously, as recent events have proven, the abuse, the treatment of humans as cattle. And so Jean Jacket's consumption of the audience of the stage master, much like the xenomorph, is a consequence, a reflection of our evils come back to haunt us in a familiar shape, chewing them up in a painful, torturous digestion and spitting the blood and bile back out. In spite of the triumph and humor when Jean Jacket dies unceremoniously, deceived by something as simple as a large balloon, something about its beautiful angelic form falling down is melancholic. When the credits roll, Jean Jacket leaves the category of alien, falling in line instead with the monkey and horses. It becomes yet another dead monument to humanity's exploitation, and it makes it clear as day that we do not deserve the impossible. Arrival's heptapods begin as tentacles. People say that the octopus is genius and in some ways smarter than a human. Can an octopus beat Astel without taking damage? Didn't think so, but there has always been this idea of intelligence beyond our own understanding, something viewed outside of the circumstances of human communication, of our dexterity and our language. And that something is prompted by the visitors of Arrival. They've transcended time, their existence is so beyond us, and yet here they are to help us. In their first appearance, octopi or squid is exactly what one might think of. Tentacles of darkness emerging from the mist. The movie's premise is translation, and so obviously we have to figure out what they're saying. We can't see above them just yet. From this perspective, they're towering over us as if they're descending upon Earth, reinforced by the colossal verticality of their ships. On their surface are what look like wrinkles already hinting at their vast wisdom. Like the many aliens I've discussed over the course of this video, I cannot help but attribute the most familiar possible things to it, lest it leave my mind scarred. From these few shots, I'd say they almost look like trees, these living beings on Earth that appear so much more primitive, and yet are so much older, having seen and lived through so much more than we ever will. The other thing they somewhat resemble are hands, made into a claw-like grip. It's another one of countless connections we make through pareidolia, though with the nature of these creatures, the association is less unfounded. Hands are the tools of writing, and it is in the heptapods' writing that we begin to understand them. Throughout Arrival, the tension that plagues humanity is whether the heptapods are dangerous or not. We fear what we do not understand. You can easily see how the world governments come to this conclusion from these designs. These strange shapes that appear foreign, yet which carry qualities of things we've seen before, like a malformed apparition. And so humanity's first response is to lash out, planting a bomb and threatening the aliens, giving them ultimatums like they're so used to doing to each other. Perhaps they're also frightened because the aliens begin to twist what is so fundamental to us, so core to our very being. Their language follows no conventions of linguistics, instead a series of circular glyphs with no clear start or end, not connected with their vocal sounds. They still speak, communicate, make motions with their limbs, but everything else about them screams inhuman. Earlier I outlined the tension that plagued humanity, but the tension of Arrival as a film for the audience is not in the threat aliens pose, but the threat that we do. A ticking clock runs down following the supposed death of one of the creatures. World leaders cut off connection and prepare to annihilate these beings, their first instinct always being to blow things up. But then Louise makes her way inside, and she sees the truth. When we finally see the full silhouette of one of the heptapods, we get this. And it looks, well, not human, but certainly humanoid. And one of my favorite bits of design is that we don't actually know if that's its head up there. It may very well be like a squid, that upper shape simply an extra little tip. But the camera still lingers on that upper section, seemingly where Louis' vision is drawn to as it grants her knowledge, attributing humanity to it. And so, in spite of remaining in shadow, this massive being suddenly feels far more knowable. We're not seeing them beneath the waves, but looking up at the stars. And this signals the film's turning point. It reveals their intent, the fact that they're here to help us, and in return they need us to help them. And so Arrival ends with peace, a gift given to humanity to transcend the linear bounds of time, something our entire existence has been based upon. And on one hand, this is a similar form of terrifying unraveling, bringing in questions of destiny and fate and meaning. But in choosing this path, to have a child despite knowing where it ends, Louis accepts this frailty and yet endures. Because what was offered was a gift. The aliens came not with violence but with language. Terrified as we are, we reach our highest point when we learn not to fear what is alien, but to understand it. To understand that it may very well be, in the most important ways, much like us. Why do we search, speculate, and lie about aliens? And why is the prospect of them so much less interesting when we think about them realistically, when we consider how impossibly far their evolutionary branches would be if they were real, like little bacteria in the water? Why do we envision them in our own shape? Why do we want them to speak our language? It can often feel as if we're desperate for connection, for something that knows more than us while still being deeply connected to us. The wonder of looking up, the concept of beings so beyond us is existentially terrifying, yes, but also a little humbling. Every character I've discussed has been a reflection. Every character has been fictional, created by us, and each reveals just a little more about who we are. So many questions are prompted by those lights in the sky, and while they may have led to paranoid conspiracy, they also led to a 9-year-old me, sitting between the bookshelves in that musty old library. Frightened, yes, but also curious. Growing, getting ideas, fostering a love for horror and the wonder the genre can evoke. Thinking of all the stories that have led to Astel, to the Xenomorph, to Jean Jacket, to the heptapods. That lingering mystery, the slightest possibility that any of these things could be true, is enthralling. And so it's somewhat depressing that our current age of information is also one of disinformation. It's easier now to create a lie than it is to access the truth. At this stage, flying saucers have all but disappeared from the cultural consciousness. Government cover-ups are not of saucers in the sky but of perversion of the elite. The mystique and appeal that fascinated me is mostly gone now. As camera quality gets clearer and clearer, so does the quality of CGI, AI, and more visual effects to counter it. What, then, is the point of questioning what's in the sky? When it's hard to even believe the things being seen in everyday life, when what's hidden isn't some insane alien discovery, but simply the most basic of truths, when technologies continue to be developed that serve no purpose other than to make it easier to lie. And why is it that when it's still easy to tell, when these truths are so clear, when these lies are made so obvious, that we can just move on? If we ever see an alien, would we really be all that shocked? And would we even believe our own eyes? It's difficult existing in the internet, especially in this decade. Distrust of your eyes has always been present when it comes to the extraterrestrial, even in the 1950s. Hallucinations, biases, the fact that it was just a cloud or a plane or a bird. But never before has information been working against us to this extent when this distrust festers from active malice. AI is killing us. The prospect of truth becomes so much more difficult to face. What use is it to look for aliens now in the state we're in? We are becoming worse as people, our content shortening, our ethics and kindness failing, our media literacy degrading. Not the media literacy used in fandom spaces as a buzzword for shipping arguments. I mean the media literacy that allows you to see a news article and to read beyond the headline, to see a screenshot and check out the full video. The simple effort to see if something is real or not. The fiction I've spoken of is a refuge to me sometimes. I might know they aren't real, but at least they evoke a similar existentialism, a similar curiosity or wonder. It's kind of a substitute for what is fading away. The idea that we'll ever find something out there. The idea that I'll actually believe it if it happens. The horrifying aliens that dwell in these worlds are often unknowable because of their human elements. Whether it be because they take on these human traits themselves, mocking and frightening us, or because there are humans who experience them and, much like in reality when we come across something wonderful, have their minds jump to exploitation, to violence, to cruelty. A small sinking feeling I get at times is that there's nothing out there. I've always been in the camp of people who think it's scarier that way, that we're the only living speck of light in a quiet, empty universe. The very concept of planets infinitely larger than Earth being devoid of any life, simply being comprised of barren dunes, is already a little overwhelming. But maybe it's a little egotistical to see it that way, to view everything from a perspective so utterly human. The idea that we're the most important beings in the entire universe. Arrival's theme relies on the aliens being benevolent, being human only in the most important ways. It cost one of them their life, but they knew this would happen and went forth regardless. In Alien, the android Ash says the following.
You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility.
You admire it?
I admire its purity, a survivor, unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
It comes off as an insult to humanity, a mockery from one of the machines we ourselves have heralded as the future. But what I am reminded of when he speaks these words is what becomes of the alien in the end, in spite of it all. Ripley survives and keeps her soul. And beyond the realms of fiction, beyond these themes of abuse, exploitation, assault, and death, these aliens are made by us. There is artistry behind them, human hands capable of so much, capable of understanding, seeing ourselves, depicting our evils with a stark awareness. In being so foreign and horrifying, and in being so reflective of our fears, these creatures are, in a way, a triumph. They are fuel for this very essay. They show the magic we are capable of. Deep beneath, in the ocean, we already see things that inspire both fear and awe. We don't need to look far to trace the inspirations. We see it in every work of fiction, every story told, every myth and legend. We've searched for something beyond for as long as we can remember looking up, drawing lines between the stars. We fantasize beings of horror, beauty, and in many cases both. Far above, beyond the stars, may very well be something else. Something in that cold, near infinite abyss. And past all the evil and existentialism prompted not just by aliens but by us, is still a childlike hope for more. I want to see something flying across the night sky. I want to see the glimmer of something else beyond us. Something that reflects us and all that we are capable of. I want to believe.
Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? Gone for soldiers, everyone. gone. Got graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the graveyards gone?